everyone, it's Alice, and today I thought we would talk all about mystery thrillers. So I'm gonna share some of my favorites with you, and then I have a TBR stack that I thought I would also show you. Now, I generally find mystery thrillers very enjoyable to read. Like, I really like them, and I've gotten really into reading them in the past couple of years. It does take quite a lot to impress me in this genre, but I don't know, I just find these books very entertaining. I haven't included any historical mysteries really in this video because I kind of want to do a separate video all about those. We do have one classic, but mostly these are more contemporary mystery thrillers, and out of all of the ones that I've read, these are my favorites. Firstly, we have The Lost Man by Jane Harper. And as some of you may know, Jane Harper is one of my favorite authors. I love her books so much. This is set in Australia, and it's about these two brothers who find their third brother dead out in the outback. And initially, everyone thinks that this is a suicide, but then something doesn't quite add up about that. My favorite thing about Harper's books is the atmosphere. Like, she's just so good at it. And I really like the setting in this one as well. It has that like small town thing going on in it. And this is quite dark and suspenseful and a little creepy sometimes. The characters in here are fascinating, and it is a little bit of a slow burn, but it's very clever. I also really like Harper's other books, by the way, which if you like this one, you should definitely check those out. And I can't wait for her to write more because I just want to read everything she writes. Speaking of clever, next up we have And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is, of course, a classic. And if I had to choose one favorite within this genre, like I was forced to choose just one favorite, it would probably be this one. This is about these 10 people who are summoned to this island by an eccentric billionaire, and they don't have anything in common, except they all have a dark secret in their past. A secret that someone has decided to start punishing them for. And they're stuck on this island, and one by one, they all start dying. This is just a brilliant novel, and I loved it. I loved the setting of this and how the book gets like progressively darker as we go, and it gets more and more creepy. And Christie just writes these books and these like plots that I can never figure out. Like, I can never figure out what's going on. And this one really just takes the cake for me. Like, it's so good. And it's even so good that you could easily reread it despite the fact that you already know how it's gonna end. Like, it's that good. Next, we have got a Swedish book, and it is Störst av allt by Malin Persson Giolito. And this has the title Quicksand in English. And this is about this mass shooting that takes place at this prep school in Stockholm's wealthiest suburb. And we meet this 18-year-old girl who is charged with her involvement in the massacre, which left her best friend and her boyfriend dead. This is pretty dark, I'm not gonna lie, but it's structured in a really interesting way because we start off by meeting the main character after everything has happened, and she is on trial and she is facing the consequences of what has happened, and we like slowly but surely figure out what actually happened that day. And what I think is really great about this book is that the main character is one of those characters that you can never really figure out. Like, you can't figure out if you like her or not, or if you're rooting for her or not. She's very complicated and not at all like perfect, and she's a very fascinating character. I also really like how this book comments on like parts of Scandinavian culture, which I could really relate to, and I just think this is great. Then we're staying in Scandinavia for a little bit more with this next one that I can't find my copy of. I know I have a copy of it, but I don't know where it is. I think I maybe lent it to someone like years ago and I never got it back. But either way, it is The Snowman by Joel Nesbø. You might be familiar with the Harry Hole series, which this book is a part of, but you don't need to have read the other books in the series to read this book. I don't remember what number this is, but it doesn't really matter. Like, you can just read this as a standalone, and in my opinion, this is the best book in that series. It's about this serial killer who keeps leaving behind snowmen at the crime scenes of the murders that he has committed. And this detective that we're following is the first person to sort of put all of this together and realize that all of these cases are linked. And as he starts investigating, he gets pulled into this serial killer's insane world. I actually really need to reread this one as well because again, it's one of those books that you could reread because it's that good. And it's been like 8 years since I read this book and I don't remember much from it, like the actual plot. I just remember being completely engrossed and really creeped out, and I just loved the suspense in the book, and the case is just like really, really good. Next, we've got another book that I can't find my copy of, but it's I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. And this is about this woman whose life turns into a nightmare in a split second. And she finds that the only way she can move on from what has happened is to just like leave her life behind and go to this remote cottage in Wales. But then of course she gets there and she finds it very difficult to keep the ghosts of her past at bay. I remember I gasped when I got to the end of this. Like, this is really, really clever. And there are all of these threads throughout this book that just come together brilliantly at the end. It does start off a little bit slowly, but once you get through that, the suspense is just fantastic. Then we've got a book that is definitely not slow, like at all, and it is The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Now this is technically like a science fiction mystery, I guess, but the science fiction bit is that all of the characters in this book are stuck in a time loop, so they keep reliving the same day over and over. And our main character keeps waking up in all of these different bodies, and he is told that if he can solve the mystery of who is going to kill Evelyn Hardcastle at the end of this day, he will be set free. And that maybe sounds weird because it kind of is, but it's also just like so fun. This is a very intense book and there's a lot going on in it all the time, and it's the kind of book that will not give you a break at all, and it's kind of complicated, but once you get into it, it's amazing. Like, I remember when I started realizing what was going on, like I understood the time loop and all of that, I was hooked. And I think that this is a really creative way of writing a mystery, and it's the kind of book that's gonna keep you guessing until the end. And technically, you sort of have to solve two things in this book, like one, who killed Evelyn Hardcastle, and two, what the hell is even going on? I had to include my favorite Ruth Ware in this video as well, and it is The Turn of the Key. And this is about this woman who sees an ad for a live-in nanny for this family who lives in the beautiful Scottish Highlands. And she gets the job, and this family seems perfect, but then she gets there and she realizes that things are maybe not as perfect. And we actually find out in the beginning of the book that she is in jail, accused of having caused the death of one of the children in her care. The setting of this is great because it's set in the middle of nowhere and in this house that's like really weird because it's a Victorian house, but the people who live there have upgraded it to become this like technology house, which creates this like pretty creepy backdrop, which I loved. This has some great atmosphere, it's a little spooky and a little creepy, and I found it very compelling, and I read the whole thing in like a day, I think. Now, I don't always have the best luck with this author, but I keep reading her books because like when it's like this, it's really, really good. Then we've got a little bit of a lighter one, and it is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. And this is set in this peaceful retirement village where 4 pensioners meet weekly to discuss unsolved murders, and they call themselves the Thursday Murder Club. And then this brutal murder takes place right in their idyllic little village, and they find themselves in the middle of the case. This is just delightful. It's probably more mystery than thrillery, I'll admit, but I just wanted to include a bit of a lighter book in this video as well. It's a very cozy mystery. It's delightful and charming and pretty clever in my opinion, and I really enjoyed reading about the pensioners because they're just really fun characters to read about. Second to last, we have got one that probably leans more just thrillery and maybe even a little horror-ish, and it is Misery by Stephen King. This is about this famous author who gets in a car accident and is saved by a woman who says that she is his biggest fan. And she happens to be very upset because his new book just came out and he has killed off her favorite character, and she is not gonna let him go until he fixes his mistake. This is pretty brutal in parts, I'm not gonna lie, but it's also very, very thrilling. It's exciting and suspenseful and dark, and I really liked the characters in here and how their feelings are captured. It's the kind of book that goes bonkers when it really takes off, and it's kind of scary, not gonna lie, but it's also a lot of fun. Last of my faves, we have got another Scandinavian book, and it is Mannen som ikke var morder by Hjort Rosenfeldt, and this has the title Dark Secrets in English. It's set in this little town outside of Stockholm where this 16-year-old boy is found dead in the forest, missing his heart, and this team of investigators are called in to help and try and figure out what has happened, and they find themselves teamed up with this criminal psychologist and profiler who is really good at his job, but he also like rubs everyone the wrong way. The characters in this book are just fantastic, and the main character is fascinating, but he is horrible. Like, he's very unlikable. So if you don't like reading books about unlikable characters, this is not the book for you. I find it very fascinating though, and I found him very, very interesting to read about, and I loved seeing this team come together and work on this case and all of their dynamics. And when I was halfway through this book, I was glued to the page. I could not put this book down because it was just fantastic and I needed to know what was gonna happen. Now, those are all of my favorites and all of my recommendations, and we're gonna move on to my TBR. Now, I have a lot of these types of books on my shelves waiting to be read, and I just picked out some of them today to show you that I'm really excited about. And the first one is The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. And I got this book mostly because a lot of people have been raving about it, and it's set in a small town in England, I'm pretty sure. And it's about this vicar who moves to this town and finds that the community is like haunted by death and despair, and there's obviously something going on, and there are all of these secrets, and someone has disappeared, and I think someone commits suicide, but maybe it's not a suicide. I don't really know, but it just sounds great, and I really want to try something by this author, and apparently this is supposed to be really good. Secondly, we have Unspeakable Things by Jess Laurie, and this is, I'm pretty sure, inspired by something that happened in the author's hometown, which is really cool. It's set in the 80s in Minnesota, and it's about these local boys who keep disappearing, and they do come back, but when they come back, they're all like weird and violent, and no one can figure out what has happened to them, which sounds very mysterious. Then we've got Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips, and I got this book mostly because of the setting. It's set in Siberia in this little like tightly woven community, and I think 2 girls go missing from this town, and that obviously is not great. I imagine this is going to be really atmospheric, and I just think the setting sounds amazing. Another book that I'm pretty sure has a cool setting is The Memory Wood by Sam Lloyd, and this is about this boy who has grown up in this wood, and it's the only home that he knows, and it's the only world that he knows, and he comes across this 13-year-old girl who is being hidden in this wood by her abductor. So she has been kidnapped and she's being hidden in this wood, and she wants this boy to help her get out, but he doesn't want to help her because he's never had any friends before, and he doesn't want her to leave, which sounds messed up, but also very intriguing. Next, I have The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell, and this one sounds really interesting. It's about this woman in her mid-20s who are trying to find out who her birth parents are, and she does find out, and she finds out that she is the sole inheritor to this like mansion in London, and she gets really excited because not only does she now know who she is, but her whole life is going to change because of her inheritance. But then she's not the only one who's been waiting for this day. There are other people lurking about who I'm assuming does not want the best for her. Then we have got The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't have super high expectations for this because I've heard really mixed things. It seems like the kind of book that people either love or they really dislike. So we'll see how this goes, but I think it sounds really great. It's about a group of like old college friends who get together every year around New Year's, I think, and this year they've gone to this hunting lodge and then they get snowed in. And then there's a killer among them, which, you know, I love a good locked room mystery, so Hopefully I will be in the group that actually likes this book. Second to last, I have The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. And I've read one other book by this author and I really want to read more, and I've heard that this is one of his best, so I'm very excited. It's set at this summer camp where a girl disappears, which sounds great. Obviously not that she disappears, but the setting of the summer camp sounds amazing. And I think we follow one of the friends of the disappeared girl who grows up and carries this mystery with her, like as she's growing up, and she can never really get rid of it because it's unsolved and she just like feels like she can't move on. And I think she returns to the summer camp to try to like get closure, and I'm assuming maybe we figure out what happened. Lastly, we have The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce, and the title of this alone is enough to intrigue me. It's set at this hotel that used to be a sanatorium in the Swiss Alps, and we meet this detective who is off duty. She's at this hotel to celebrate an engagement or something, and she feels like there's something definitely off about this place. And then someone goes missing, and then I also think they're snowed in, because of course they are, and I just think it sounds great. Okay everyone, that was everything I had for you today, and I would love to know what your favorite mystery thriller is, or maybe like top 3 favorites and why you like them so much. As usual, links to my Patreon and other social media will be in the description if you're interested, and I will see you soon. Bye!